Okay, so hopefully you have finished assignment 9. Hopefully you found it a little bit more interesting than the previous assignments, a touch of graphics. And hopefully you're ready, and some of you I know are ready, for assignment 10. And so this is sort of what we're working towards. We would really like to get to some sort of interaction with the graphics that make things kind of interesting. Before we get there, we've got to have a project that is structured, because as things get more complicated, it becomes more and more important to structure our code so that things don't just turn into an awful mess. So with this assignment 10, we're going to create our first project with multiple files. And we're going to start with essentially the faces project of last time, and then just elaborate on it a little bit. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create this code in front of you. I'm just going to bang through this as fast as I can, and hope that you will make good use of your pause and replay features of your video player. And you don't have to watch the whole video all in one sitting. You can feel free to watch it for a little while, stop, come back, save your stuff, and then replay the video from where you left off. So I'm just going to minimize this, and I'm going to start a new project. File, new, Java project, project name, assignment 10. And in this assignment 10, I will have a new, file, new class. And I'm going to call this one random faces. So we're going to have a whole bunch of faces all just kind of generated by random. They're going to be similar, and they're all going to be controlled by some other class. They're all going to be from the face class. So we'll have a file, new class, and we'll call this face. Okay? So an instance of the face class will be one face, and inside of random faces we're going to create a whole bunch of those faces. So what will this look like in memory? We're going to have a whole bunch of objects that are all faces, and then we're going to have one other object that is going to have references to each one of them. And this one will be the all faces class that is actually displayed on the computer screen. And it will tell each one of these faces to draw itself in its own way on the screen. So each one of these faces will probably have a location, because we don't want them all in the same spot. And I'm going to give each one of my faces a different eye color, but otherwise they're going to look the same. But just so that we know that we can change just about any one thing about them. So each face is going to store some information of its own. It's going to store its X, its Y, and its eye color. So let's start writing the code. Inside of random faces, if this is going to display on the screen, it needs to extend JFrame, and we'll use the quick fixes to import the stuff and get rid of the warning, let it declare the version number. We're going to add a main method, and in the main method we're going to create an instance of the random faces. We're going to set its size. We'll make it 600 by 400. We're going to set it to be visible. And we're going to have a public void paint graphics G. And of course we'll use the quick fix to import the right library for graphics. And inside of this, right for now, I'm going to do it quick and dirty, really lazy. I'm just going to say new face dot paint. Oh, and a face is going to need to know where to paint itself, so it's going to receive the graphics object. Now, new face. I've got a face class, so this comes out okay, but it doesn't have a paint method. So I'm going to use a quick fix, and I'm going to click on Create Paint. And I can see what Eclipse has done for me. It has gone ahead and created a stub for a paint method. And it says, okay, to do, auto-generated method. So basically what it's saying is, you got to fill this in. Each face is going to have some information, right? So if each face is going to have an X, Y, and an I color, I'm going to create those as instance variables inside of the face class. So I'm going to say private int X, Y, and the color is going to be a color. Color, I color. Okay, and Java doesn't know what color is until you import it, so I just put my cursor there, use the quick fix to add the import. And it went ahead and added the import for graphics as well. That's good. Now, if I'm going to have instance variables like X, Y, and I color, I'm going to have to initialize those instance variables. So I'm going to do that in the constructor. I'm going to say public face, and I'm going to give them random values. I'm just going to say X equals some int that is math.random times I'm going to say 500, and y equals some int math.random times, I'm going to say 300. And to get the eye color, I want to make that a random color, so I'm going to write a method to create a random color. I'm going to say public color, because this method is going to give me back a color, and I'm going to say random color. Now, I can return some new color, and there is a constructor for a color that takes 3 floats. R, G, and B. And I'd like to choose those at random. Now the math.random method gives me back a double, and its value is between 0 and 1. And I just happen to know that this constructor for color takes in 3 floats that are all between 0 and 1. So this is close, but it's a double. Well, I'm just going to have to convert it with a cast to a float. And if I do that for G and B as well, that'll pick 3 random numbers, all between 0 and 1, and pass them to the constructor for color. It's going to create that new color and return it. So now up here, now that I've got this random color method, and I'm going to make it private, I'm just going to be calling it between these 2 squiggly brackets. So this color thing should be private as well. Anything that is I'm only going to use between these 2 squiggly brackets inside of this class can be private. And if it can be private, it's a good idea to make it private. If it's going to be used outside of the class, like this paint method is used right here. And this is outside of those squiggly brackets, yeah? So it must be public. If I'm going to call this method from this other location, it's got to be public. If it's private, then it's only accessible, it's only usable, it's only visible from within the squiggly brackets. That's really important. So here I'm going to initialize all three instance variables. I've got three instance variables, x, y, and eye color. I'm initializing x here. I'm initializing y there. And I'm going to initialize eye color to some random color. Now when I paint this face, I'm going to, well, first I'm going to set my paintbrush to black. And I'm going to fill a black boundary, so fill oval. And I'm going to start it out at XY, the XY location of this particular face. And I'm going to give it a width of, oh, I don't know, 100 and a height of 100. And then I'm going to draw the flesh of the face. So I want to set the color to some new color. And I'm going to use a tool called Color Picker. Now this is a website. If I go to www.colorpicker.com, I would like to have some colors that are, oh, a little bit more of a flesh tone. So if I drag this to some other location, oh, that looks like a good skin color. This up here where it says EBC 994, that's a code that describes this color that I see over here. And I'm just going to copy that. Color has another constructor. One of the constructors I'm going to use up here that takes three floats that are all between 0 and 1, telling me how much red, how much green, and how much blue to use. But another one takes this color code. It's a hex value. If I type in 0x and then paste that EBC 994, that code that I got from Color Picker, this will give me the same color that I saw on my Color Picker screen. It'll give me this flesh tone. And so that Color Picker tool becomes kind of useful. Now I want a G.fill oval. And I'm just going to go over a little bit. I want basically a 2-pixel boundary. So I'm going to say x plus 2, y plus 2. And the width, I'm going to make it 4 less than what I did before, 96, and the height 96. And then, let's see, I'm going to set the color to, I would like to draw, I'd like to draw the mouth. And that should be sort of a red. Be a little more red than that. That looks good, like a good color for the mouth. So I'm just going to, for now, I'm just going to paste that here. I'm going to take this line of code, I'm going to paste it there. I'm going to take that value and paste it right there. And I'm going to say this is a tan color for the face. I'm going to say, I'm adding comments so that I don't get confused with my code later. I'm going to say this is a black border. I'm going to say red for the lips. And I'll just say G.fill oval. And let's see, where should I make this? I'm going to say x plus 20, y plus 65. And make it 60 by 15. And I'm just guessing values here. Let's see how I'm guessing. Oh, I don't see a face. Nothing at all. That's not a very good guess. What's wrong? I just didn't see anything happen. Let's just try it again. Random faces. play, click OK. Oh, there it is. Hey, that looks pretty good. So I've got a face, and it's got lips, and if I close that and I play it again, there it is, and it's in a slightly different location. Okay. I'd like to make that into a little bit of a smile. I'm going to set the color back to tan, and I'm going to fill another oval. And it's going to be like this one, except it's just going to be up 5 pixels in the Y. And let's try this again. And there we go. A nice little smile. That's beautiful. So I've got my mouth. Let's draw an eye. Let's write a method to draw the eye. So I'm going to say private, because I'm not going to draw the eye outside of the face class, right? Not outside of the brackets. So I'm going to say private void, because this method doesn't have to give anything back. It's just going to do something on the screen. I'm going to say draw eye. I'm going to give it needs an int x and an int y, the locations where it's going to draw the eye. And it's going to draw it with a graphics objects, G. And so I'll say g.setColor, color.white. That'll be the white of the eye. G.fillOval. And let's see, we're going to put this at x, y, and we'll make it, oh, I don't know, 25 by 15. And g.setColor. And we'll set it to the eye color, the one that we picked up here in the constructor, right up there. And then we're going to say g.fillOval. Oh, I don't know, x plus 7 and y plus 3. And we'll give it a width and height of maybe 10 for the pupil of the eye. And then, or that's actually the colored part of the eye. I think it's called the iris. And let's draw the pupil. We'll make it black. And we'll put it at x plus 10, y plus 10, with the width and height of maybe 4. It's going to be smaller. And here what I'm thinking is if I've subtracted, let's make this plus 6. So if I've subtracted 6, so this is 6 smaller than that one, then I need to shift it over by half of that. So instead of y plus 3, I'm going y plus 6, and instead of x plus 7, it's x plus 10. Let's draw an eye. So down here I can say draw eye at some location. X plus 20, y plus 20, and let's see how that looks. I'm getting an error message. Oh, my draw eye method is expecting 3 things: an x value, a y value, and a graphics object. I've given it just an x value and a y value. I haven't given it a graphics object, G. Oh, there we go. One eye. Beautiful. Now, if you're wondering why my numbers are all coming out reasonably good, it's because this isn't the first time I've done it. I have to confess that I did this assignment once really quick, and then I printed it out, and I'm doing it again now. And I'm just kind of copying out what I've done before. So you'll probably have some trial and error when you're picking these numbers. And I'm doing a bad thing. I'm hard coding a bunch of numbers into this method, and it's going to work just fine for this simple little project. But as a general rule, these numbers that are just typed in right here, those are called magic numbers. They're magic because people don't know what they mean. And if you go back later, you're going to have trouble modifying stuff. But for a very simple project like this, a few magic numbers I'm going to get away with it. So what else do I want to do? I want to draw another eye, yeah? So it's going to be just like this one, except the x value is going to be a little bit bigger. And you notice that every x and y value I'm using in this paint method, they're all offsets of the x and y value that I have for this particular face. That's really important. And there's another interesting thing. I have an x value inside of my draw eye method, and I have an x value inside of the face object. So when I use x, which x does it refer to? This one down here, or this one up here? Well, the way Java works is I've got two variables of the same name in a scope. It's an overlapping scope. Whenever you declare a variable in some new scope that is more local, and the other variable is still visible and has the same name, Java will always refer to the one that is most closely declared. So this x, in essence, hides the one up here. If I had named this something else, xloc, you notice how this just suddenly turned blue to match the color up here? That's because Java is going to look for this one, and it says, not one of those. All right, is going to look a little further, and then it finds this one and says, oh, there it is. But if it finds it here, it won't bother looking any further, and it's going to say, oh, it's this x over here. So it's really important. The thing that happens in memory, say I've got an eye, or I've got a face, and that face has an x variable, okay? And so the x variable, there's a little bit of memory stored on the heap for this particular x. But when the draw eye method is called, memory is set aside on the stack for the draw eye method, okay? So there's a bunch of stuff that's going on the stack, and at some point the draw eye is method is called, and it's got some memory associated with it. It's got x variable, a y variable, and a g variable. And so it's got its own x, y, and g. Now x and y, those are basic data types. They're held directly. They're stored right inside of here. So when the paint method calls the draw eye method, the paint takes the value that's in this x. It's going to take the value that's stored in that particular face, and it's going to make a copy of it. It's going to add 20 and make a copy, and that copy plus 20 is passed into the x value. So say this face had an x value of, oh, I don't know, 10. So the paint method, which is down here, performs a calculation on that 10. It's going to add 20 to it and copy it into this x variable. So then you see 30 for example, stored in that X. The paint method is going to then use its own X and its own Y. It's going to use its own copy of the graphics object, although the graphics object is an object. It lives on the heap, yeah? So somewhere on the heap is this graphics object. Oops. I'm going to call it G. Paint has a reference to it. Somewhere there's a rotation tool, but you get the idea. Paint has a reference to G, and it copies that reference up to the G of the draw I method. So what happens is that both methods point to the same graphics object that's still living on the heap. And so that same graphics object is used when it's filling ovals and drawing stuff. So all that stuff gets drawn on the same screen, all in the same window. So we're going to draw the second eye. Instead of x plus 20, we're going to go x plus, oh, I don't know, 58. Let's see how that looks. Oh, nice. Two beautiful eyes. Now I'm gonna do something a little bit different. I'm gonna create an array. An array is a collection of data. I'm gonna say int, and then we use square brackets to declare an array. And I'm gonna say xlooks is equal to, and then squiggly brackets, and then I'm gonna put 3 values. And remember, all my xy values are all offsets of the xy of the face. So I'm just gonna say, oh, maybe x plus 40, y plus 50, x plus 60. And then I'm going to make another one that I call y-looks. And I'm going to make this one y plus 60, y plus 40, and y plus 60. Now what are those things? This is going to be a triangle. Those are the x and y locations of a triangle. So if I look at those locations on the screen, say my x and y I'm just going to write, say 0, 0 is right up there. So if I go 40 over in the y, excuse me, this should be x, x, x. So if I go, for the first point, it's 40 over and 60 down. So 40 over, 60 down. The next one is 50 over and 40 down. So I'll have a point. And the next one is 60 over and 60 down. So it's going to be at the same level as this one. So these 3 locations are the 3 corners of a triangle. What I want to do is I want to fill a triangle. And we can make these shapes as complicated as we want. But I'm just going to try and make a triangle for the nose. And the way I'm going to do that, I'm going to say g.fill polygon. And the fill polygon method requires 2 arrays. So an array is a collection Okay, in this case it's a collection of ints, and I've got 3 integers stored in the x locus. I've got 3 integers stored in my y locus. So I'm going to give my x locus and my y locus to the fill polygon command, and it also needs to know how many locations are in the array, and it'll draw a polygon that connects those dots in that order. First this one, then this one, then this one, and I think you have to go clockwise. I'm not positive, and so that should draw a nose. I guess I should probably set the color for the nose. So let's see. Well, let's just see what happens if I draw it like this. Oh, I did. Did I set it to black? Oh, why do I have a black nose? Because the last thing I did was draw an eye, and the last color that I used in the eye was black, so I end up with a black nose. Yeah, that looks okay. I'm going to leave it alone. So I've got a face. That's great. And if I run it again, I get a different face. Now I have a strange issue going on here. What happens if I resize my window? Ah, it's a face-plosion. Hey, look, each face has a different eye color. That's great, but I really don't want all these faces showing up as I resize my window. That's really not the effect that I was going for. And why is it doing that? Well, the way an applet works is that every time it needs to paint itself on the screen, paint is called. And as I resize the window, paint gets called. So as I drag this out, it's calling paint. And what does paint do? Paint creates a new face and tells it to draw on the screen. And so that new face, that call to the constructor, new face, calls this method that creates a random x and a random y, creates a random eye color, creates memory for that face in the heap, and then from that new face we tell it to paint, which draws all the stuff. Well, I've got another interesting thing. That face, after it's drawn on the screen, I don't have any more access to it. And Java has this thing, it's called a garbage collector. When you no longer have access to something in memory, it automatically erases it. So that face is painted on the screen and then wiped out of memory. So I can see the image of it left on my screen, but it no longer lives in memory. I don't have multiple faces inside of my random faces application. I've only got, I had, for a very brief instant in time, a face in memory. So what I'd really like to do is I'd like to create a bunch of random faces one time and have all those faces kind of stay on my screen. If I try to fill in a background, I say g.setColor, new color, and let's pick something interesting for a background. I like greenish colors. That looks like a good color for a background. 0x, Control V, paste. Oops. Gee, there's something it doesn't like about that. Oh, I haven't imported color into this. Import color. It doesn't like that. Something's not right here. Oh, it imported the wrong color. Whoops. You got to be careful with those quick fixes. Let's try it again. I want java.awt. Because that's got the right constructor. All right, and now I want to say g.fill rect 00600 by 400. There we go. There's a pretty background color. Now what happens? Now my face just jumps around. Why? Because each time I paint, I first wipe over that old face, and then I draw some new face. And so just like in memory, where the old face is lost, on my screen, my old face is also lost. So what can I do to have a nice pretty background and lots of faces, and faces that don't jump around or move or when I drag my window? Well, I guess this random faces class has got to have a bunch of faces. Now, we've seen one kind of collection inside a face. We've seen the array. The array uses this square bracket notation, and this particular way of initializing an array is just using the squiggly bracket separated by commas. We're going to create another kind of collection that's called an array list. So inside of face, I'm going to say private. Whoops, no, not inside of face. Excuse me. Inside of random faces, we're going to create a private array list. And inside of angle brackets, we put the type of object that the container holds, face. And I'm going to give this variable a name. I'm going to call it all faces. Now, what I need to do is, this is an instance variable, and it needs to be initialized in a constructor. As soon as I create an instance variable for a class, and I'm calling the constructor for the class, I know that in that constructor I need to initialize it. So I've got to write a constructor. I'm going to say public. Okay, my constructors are public, and they have the same name as the class, so I'm going to call it random faces. And this constructor doesn't take any parameters. It doesn't have any information coming in. And I'm going to say new array list of type face. Whoops. That'll create a new array list. But I have to assign it to the instance variable. So I'm going to say all faces equals that new array list of type face. So in memory, I'm going to have this all faces object, and it's actually got an array list. So instead of the way I drew it here is an oversimplification, what I've really got is that all faces variable holds an array list, and that array list is going to have a bunch of pointers, each one pointing to a separate face object. So what I've done right now is this array list doesn't have any faces in it yet. All I've done is I've created this variable which holds an array list, and the array list will be empty. It doesn't have anything. So let's say I'm going to put 3 faces in it. That's pretty easy to do. I can say all faces dot add new face. And let's do that 3 times. Now Java's complaining about me, about something. Oh, I spelled array list wrong? Oh, I've spelled face wrong. I spelled it with a lowercase f, and it should be a capital. You'll notice that my class names, I always start my class names with a capital letter, and that's a really good habit to get into. It makes it easier for us to distinguish a variable name from a class name. Array list is a class, face is a class, all faces, that's a variable. So now instead of saying new face paint, I want to go through all my faces. And the way that I'm going to do this is I'm going to use a loop. I'm going to say for each face f that's contained in all faces, f dot paint. So essentially this goes through each of the faces in the all faces array list and tells each one of those to paint itself using the graphics object. It does it one by one. So when I run this now, I have 3 faces. And if I resize my window, hey, they stay put. These faces are held in the heap. And they live as long as my random faces class lives. Because that random faces, it'll live as long as this main isn't complete, as long as that thing is still visible on the screen. Set visible doesn't finish until you close the window. And so main is active, which means that all faces, my random faces are, that variable is then active. So I've got this object, which is an instance of random faces. It has an array list of all faces, which has 3 instances of face. Each one of those instances of face has an X and a Y and an I color, and they can be painted on the screen. I hope this is not too much, too quick. Your assignment is to create your own random faces application. It should have a face class, a random faces class, it'll have a paint method, it'll have a main method, it'll have a constructor. You should hold your faces in an array list. You don't have to draw a triangle as I did in my face class. But each face should have its own X and Y location and something else. I used eye color, but if you choose to give them each their own, a different sized eye, if you choose to make your face, each one of your faces a different size, those would be more difficult. You might give them each different colored lips or maybe each different colored hair. It's easy to change the color of something on your face, but make your face unique. You can go ahead and use the face that you did in the previous assignment, copy paste a lot of that code, and then just change all your numbers so that they're offsets from X and Y, and that's an easier way to get it all done. If you have any questions, please don't be afraid to send me an email in Canvas. This is a rather lengthy assignment. I'm expecting it to take you at least 5 hours. But if you have any questions or problems, feel free to send me a message, and good luck. Have fun. Thanks.